verses. As he walked along, Jesus saw a man blind from birth. His disciples asked him, "Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind?" Jesus answered, "Neither this man nor his parents sinned. He was born blind so that God's works might be revealed in him. We must work the works of him who sent me while it is day. Night is coming when no work can be done. As long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world." When he had said this, he spat on the ground and made mud with the saliva and spread the mud on the man's eyes, saying to him, "Go, wash in the pool of Siloam," which means sent. So the man went and washed and came back able to see. The neighbors and those who had seen him before as a beggar began to ask, "Is this not the man who used to sit and beg?" Some were saying, "It is he." Others were saying, "No, but it's someone like him." He kept saying, "I am the man." But they kept asking him, "Then how were your eyes opened?" He answered, "The man called Jesus made mud, spread it on my eyes, and said to me, 'Go to Siloam and wash.' And then I went and I washed, and I received my sight." They said to him, "Well, where is he?" And he said, "I do not know." They brought to the Pharisees the man who had formerly been blind. Now it was the Sabbath day when Jesus made the mud and opened his eyes. Then the Pharisees also began to ask him how he had received his sight. He said to them, "He put mud on my eyes, and then I washed, and now I see." Some of the Pharisees said, "This man is not from God, for he does not observe the Sabbath." But others said, "How can a man who is a sinner perform such signs?" And they were divided. So they said again to the blind man, "What do you say about him? It was your eyes he opened." He said, "He is a prophet." The Jews did not believe that he had been blind and had received his sight until they called his parents and asked them if he had received his sight. "Is this your son, who you say was born blind? How then does he now see?" His parents answered, "We know that this is our son, and that he was born blind, but we do not know how it is that he now sees, nor do we know who opened his eyes. Ask him, he is of age. He will speak for himself." His parents said this because they were afraid of the Jews, for the Jews had already agreed that anyone who confessed Jesus to be the Messiah would be put out of the synagogue. Therefore, his parents said, "He is of age, ask him." So for the second time, they called the man who had been blind, and they said to him, "Give glory to God. We know that this man is a sinner." He answered, "I do not know whether he is a sinner. One thing I do know, that though I was blind, now I see." They said to him, "What did he do to you? How then did he open your eyes?" And he answered them, "I have told you already, and you would not listen. Why? Do you want to hear it again? Do you also want to become his disciples?" Then they reviled him, saying, "You are his disciple, but we are disciples of Moses. We know what God has spoken to Moses, but as for this man, we do not know where he comes from." The man answered, "Here is an astonishing thing. You do not know where he comes from, and yet he opened my eyes. We know that God does not listen to sinners, but he does listen to the one who worships him and obeys his will. Never since the world began has it been heard that anyone opened the eyes of a person born blind. If this man were not from God, he could do nothing." They answered him, "You were born entirely in sins, and you are trying to teach us?" And they drove him out. Jesus heard that they had driven him out, and when he found him, he said, "Do you believe in the Son of Man?" He answered, "And who is he, sir? Tell me so that I may believe in him." Jesus said to him, "You have seen him, and the one who is speaking with you is he." He said, "Lord, I believe." And he worshipped him. Jesus said, "I came into this world for judgment, so that those who do not see may see, and those who do see may become blind." Some of the Pharisees near him heard this and said to him, "Surely we are not blind, are we?" Jesus said to them, "If you were blind, you would not have sin. But now that you say we see, your sin remains." The gospel of the Lord. Please have a seat. Every once in a while, you come across something that you just have to share. And I came across the most fascinating list, and it is a list of things that we learned didn't work when we were kids. Here we go. Hiding broccoli in your glass of milk doesn't work. Everybody knows that you hide it under the mashed potatoes, okay? Do not sneeze when someone is cutting your hair. This one hits to the core. You can't trust dogs to watch your food for you. Someday I'll share a deeply traumatizing event where my dog swooped up the last Suzy Q in the house. And I'm still trying to get over that. Just a minute means closer to 600 seconds, not just 60. That's the parental stretch, you know. Finally, no matter how hard you try, you cannot baptize a cat. Now, I actually gave that last one a try. Not the baptism part, but attempting to give our cat a bath. That did not work out great for me, and I'm sure I annoyed that cat. But sometimes you just have to experience something to know about it for sure. And that's what we're encountering today in our gospel lesson. A guy who's been blind all his life has a momentary exchange with Jesus, and his life is completely transformed. And this experience is so stunning, so dramatic, so powerful, so sudden, that the people in his own village don't recognize him. Hey, isn't that the blind beggar? He can see now. Is that really him? No, somebody who looks like him. Can't be him. And this goes on until the guy finally says, yeah, I'm the guy. It's me. And he is the guy. But he's not the man he was just a few moments ago. Just yesterday, blind and reduced to begging, he wouldn't have been standing on his feet, number one. He would have been sitting where his family plopped him in the morning and fetched him in the evening, somewhere advantageous, in the flow of people going back and forth through a gate or to the synagogue so that he could receive a couple coins tossed his way. But that's all behind him now. And the only thing that's left of his old life are question marks. The townspeople are asking if he's the guy who was begging on the corner. The disciples are asking a different question. They asked Jesus, why was this guy born blind in the first place? Was it his fault, or was it the fault of his parents? Whose fault was it? And I'm thinking, well, gee, who cares? That's a great way to spoil a miracle, right? Jesus has done something amazing for this guy to allow him to leave all the pain and brokenness and misery of his old life behind, but the disciples want to drag him back into it. Let's forget about all the new opportunities and possibilities that he has in front of him as a seeing person, and instead, let's go back and sift through his old life so we can find out who's to blame. Does that sound strange to you? Ridiculous even? It does to me. And some people are like that, you know. They are just much happier wallowing in the past than embracing the future. They aren't interested in what the possibilities are. They're more interested in who the suspects are. But Jesus isn't like that. He takes a moment to assure his disciples that nobody's to blame, and then he does a shocking thing. What does Jesus do? Well, he stops talking. He stops talking and starts doing. He goes over to the blind man and he heals him. And when the disciples see the blind man, they see something to discuss. When Jesus sees the blind man, he sees like someone to help. The disciples spend a lot of energy on questions. Jesus puts his energy into action. The point is, it's not enough to talk about or wonder about or debate about the miracle or the need. What pleases God is when we see a need and do something about it. What Jesus is trying to teach us here is the kingdom is not furthered 1 inch by what we believe. The kingdom is furthered by what we do because we believe. Jesus said, "Blessed are those who hear the word of God and obey it." So on this day, with this blind guy, Jesus turns words into actions. He says to the blind guy, "Wash your eyes and see what happens." He doesn't talk about love nearly as much as he acts out of love in the Bible. Read through the stories. Jesus doesn't do a lot of talking about love. He does a whole lot of acting on the love he has for people. And a good question for us is, how does what we believe show up in how we behave? Well, Jesus paints a picture for us about how powerful it can be when love is lived out. He touched the blind man's eyes, and his unseeing eyes changed. What would happen if Jesus were to touch your eyes right now? Would the way we see change as well? Well, let's talk about that. When your eyes are touched by Jesus, things change. One of the first things to change is how you see yourself. Let's face it, the blind man knew he was a nobody. He was reminded of it every day. How many people brushed by him on the side of the street and were irritated by his very existence? Even though his eyes couldn't see, his ears could hear well enough to pick up the comments not so delicately aimed his way. How many of us carry around this nagging suspicion that we haven't quite measured up? We have a tendency in our culture to argue away our successes and hold on to our failures so tightly that they begin to gnaw into us and get in the way of our future. I mean, look at Rodney Dangerfield. How many of you remember Rodney Dangerfield? Just checking. Most of us. He was the king of the self-deriding one-liner, the guy who didn't get no respect. I tell you, I get no respect. I bought a cemetery plot. The guy said, "There goes the neighborhood." I can't imagine all this stuff actually happened to him. I mean, he'd be in an insane asylum, right? Here's another one. When I played in the sandbox, our cap kept covering me up. My father carries around the picture of the kid who came with the wallet. Oh, boy. You know, Rodney Dangerfield wasn't a success because he was so funny. Rodney Dangerfield was a great success because he was right. He touched on something that was true in all of us. Inside all of us is somebody who's chained down by our wounds and our failures and the put-downs that we've heard and the insecurities that have grown up around those wounds and all the times we were not invited in when everybody else was. Now, you might not be chained to these things specifically. We all have our own wounds. But I bet you're chained to something. The blind man was chained to his inability to see and the fact that his blindness made him a throwaway in his society. We can just as easily be chained to mistakes we've made or grudges we've kept or regrets we just can't shake. These are the things that can chain us down, hem us in, hamper our movements forward. Somebody once said, the treasure of the human spirit is consumed in the fires of self-doubt. I believe that's true. I just don't think it's broad enough. I think there's a lot of things that can wreck your spirit. There are a lot of things that do wreck our spirits. Isn't that true? The good news is Jesus can free you from all of that. Whatever is bogging you down, whatever is holding you back, all the stuff you've been dragging behind you, since that awful thing somebody said to you in 7th grade. Jesus can heal all that. Did you know that? You can't go back into your past. But guess what? Jesus can. He can go all the way back and heal you all the way to this present moment. He can do it if you'll let him. He can take away your darkness too, wherever and whatever it is. Okay, another thing when Jesus touches you is you can see others differently. Can you see yourself differently? Yes. You can also see others differently. When your eyes have been touched by Jesus, you can then see not only with your eyes, but with your heart. You can look at people differently. You can see them as neighbors and not as enemies, not as people you're vying for a small amount of something for. And that's what Jesus did for the blind man. Everyone else saw him as an annoyance. Everyone else saw him as proof positive that he was a sinner, because just look at him. Jesus saw him as a person so precious to God, he not only picked him out of a crowd and healed him, but tracked him down later after he'd been thrown out of society. After everybody else had rejected him, he tracked him down again to assure him of God's love. Would the people in your life look different if you saw them the way God sees them? Would it be easier to embrace them and treat them with respect and compassion? There's a great scene in the movie Risen. I've spoken about it before. It's a wonderful Easter movie, so if you're not familiar with it, get it queued up. It's a good one. It's the story of a Roman officer who's investigating the resurrection under the assumption that it is a hoax perpetrated by Jesus' followers. And what eventually happens is this officer encounters the risen Jesus and decides to travel with him and the disciples to gather more evidence. And during this time, he sees a man with leprosy being chased off by the woman he's approached to beg from. And Jesus gets up to approach this beggar, and the disciples turn to each other with a knowing look, and they start saying, he's going to do it again, isn't he? And they know the Roman soldier says, watch what he does now. This is great. And Jesus walks over to this man who is walking back out into the field, and he puts his arms around him. And the very end of that scene, he turns back, and all his leprosy is gone. It's a great scene. The Roman officer is, of course, dumbfounded. And it's a fair question to ponder what the greater miracle is. Is it the healing itself? Or is it that Jesus moved to embrace him in the first place? What is he most healed from? The leprosy that's affecting his skin? Or the rejection that is affecting every other part of him? Something to think about. Now, the movie doesn't tell us what seeing that does to the Roman, but we can all decide what it does to us. Knowing how Jesus saw people can change the way we see others. In fact, I think that's one of the designs behind a lot of Jesus' healings. We're offered the chance to see people the way Jesus sees people. Not as annoyances, not as bitter reminders of God's punishment, not as people we'd rather not have to deal with at all, but no, the ones that Jesus looks for, finds, singles out, and encounters. And when he does that to us, just like the blind man, we can see people through Christ-opened eyes. And then I think Jesus can change the way you see God. So many people think God is mad at them, or is more interested in judging them than loving them, or deploys most of his energy along the boundary line between the good people and the not good people, patrolling it so he knows which group to bless and which group to punish. That's what the blind man thought. He thought he was permanently and forever on the wrong side of that line. He'd been told all his life that his blindness was because of God's disfavor. This miracle tells a different story, doesn't it? Jesus touches that man's eyes, helps him to see a lot of things instantly. Helps him see God isn't mad with him, but is for him and with him. And then watch what happens. At first, the healed man refers to Jesus only as the man Jesus did this to me. He's a man. Then as the story progresses, he changes his mind. And the next time, he says he's a prophet. At the end of the story, when Jesus has taken the time to find him again at the pool of Siloam, this time, the formerly blind man refers to Jesus as Lord and worships him. The closer he gets to Jesus, the more time he spends with Jesus, the clearer he sees Jesus. And isn't that the way it is for all of us? I am convinced the story teaches us two critical things. The first is the clearer you see God, the more you'll give him permission to love you completely, and the more completely you'll be able to love others. And the other is the best witness we have to offer the world is simply what God has done for us. We saw that last week in the testimony of the woman at the well. Come see a man who's told me everything I've ever done. He can't be the Messiah, can he? We see it in Mary Magdalene's Easter proclamation when she bursts into where all the other disciples are hiding out and says, I have seen the Lord. We see the same thing here. One thing I know, though I was blind, now I see. It may well be the surest way to believe in God is to believe in what God has done for you. I call it having the courage of your convictions. Saying what you know to be true in clear language that nobody can shout down. And that's what the blind man did, right? That's the sum total of his testimony. I was blind, he touched my eyes, now I can see. He wasn't afraid of anybody or anything. He told everybody, including his Pharisee inquisitors, what Jesus had done for him. No more, no less. I think this is our best testimony too. When Jesus touches your eyes, you see more clearly. When he touches your heart, you can love more powerfully. When he touches your fears, you can hope more confidently. Because that's what happens when Jesus touches you. I know for a fact that you wouldn't be sitting here this morning if Jesus hadn't touched you. I mean, this would be a gathering of the people that Jesus left alone. I mean, why would we do that? No, we're here because we know God has done something for us. And so I invite you to be curious about where that is, what that is for you. Think about why you're sitting here. Put words to it. And then be ready to share courageously what God has done for you.